What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Jones. Whether I'm hitting the trails, training for an ultramarathon, or pushing my limits in the gym strength training, I've always been fascinated by what drives us to perform at our best. This podcast is for everyone, from the serious endurance, strength, or hybrid athlete to the outdoor enthusiast who wants to live life to the fullest. I believe that peak performance is an assembly of physical training, mental fortitude, emotional health, and social support. Whether you're training for a sport or viewing life itself as the ultimate athletic event, join me in redefining limits and living a life full of challenges and adventure. Let's get into today's podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Assemble Performance Podcast. Today we have Bekah Fay on the podcast. Becca earned her doctorate in physical therapy from the University of Miami in 2019. She worked in a variety of clinic settings before moving to a non-clinical position, working with some of the biggest names in fitness, and she left it all behind to go all in as a CrossFit affiliate owner. So we definitely have a lot to learn today. Becca, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Justin.
It's good to talk to you. Had to reschedule because I was sick last week, but we made it happen.
No worries. Yeah, I'm flexible. Thank God.
So CrossFit, a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that. So I'm very interested to get into that. But could you maybe walk us through your journey earning your doctorate and what inspired you to become a physical therapist in the first place?
Yeah, starts out as a pretty typical story. I tore my ACL playing soccer in high school. So I had to do physical therapy. I loved my physical therapist. He was just an absolute force within the community. He was just like such a great role model, built this business up from the ground, had multiple therapists working with him, had a community gym on one side and his physical therapy practice on the other. And I was just really inspired by him. Didn't really know what else I would have done. So I was like, okay, I'll just do physical therapy, not knowing what that really even meant in terms of, going to school for 7 years straight and getting into a lot of debt. But I figured, hey, this will be fun. Let me go do it. So I did my undergrad at Cornell University, which is not known for any type really of physical therapy prep program or kinesiology, biomechanics, exercise science. Got like a generic biology degree there, but I was able to do my minor at Ithaca College, which is known for their DPT program, exercise science, what have you. So I was able to take a few classes over there at Ithaca College and dip my feet into the world of a pre-PT program. And I loved it. And by the skin of my teeth, somehow I got into the University of Miami. It was my reach school. Moved 1,000 miles from New York down to South Florida against my parents' wishes. And the rest is history. I met my husband while I was in school. He was from Miami. So we stayed down here because once you move to Florida, it's really hard to leave the Sunshine State. It's just beautiful down here and tons of opportunities for building your own business. So that's what ultimately kept me down here. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. As you kind of mentioned in my introduction, I had a little bit of an atypical path after physical therapy school. But I'm really glad I did it in the end. Sometimes the profession gets a bad rep these days because of the mismatch of debt to income. We're not really seeing a great return on our profession being elevated to a doctoral level from a master's. And prior to that, it was just a bachelor's degree to be a physical therapist. So there's a lot of drama around that, but ultimately I'm really proud to be able to call myself a doctor of physical therapy. And I think I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't taken that step.
Yeah, that's awesome. University of Miami, super nice college, super great athletic programs and kinesiology. So what inspired you to go to University of Miami versus somewhere else and choose it as kind of your reach school? Did you know someone else that went there, or had you just heard about how good the program is?
I don't even know how. I didn't know anybody who went to UM. Like I said, it was my reach school. I applied to, I think, 11 PT schools. I got waitlisted at I think 2 of them, I got rejected from all the others, and I got into University of Miami. Um, like I said, by the grace of God, I got in, and, I really don't know. I had fine grades. I think the problem was I wasn't in really like a pre-PT program, you know? I did all my volunteer hours, I did everything I was supposed to do, but uh, as soon as I got the interview at University of Miami, I was like, "Nice, dude. They're gonna see who I am as a person, and I actually have a shot at getting in." So I don't know how it happened. Life works in crazy ways, but it was clearly meant to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Miami's beautiful too. I'm going to be down there for a wedding this year. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So after college, you went into a clinical setting. Could you explain what clinical settings kind of look like and kind of what you did? Did you stay in Miami for that? I'm assuming so.
Yes. So during PT school, I went all over and tried to explore different settings. They kind of encourage that because they have you do an outpatient setting, they have you do an inpatient setting, just to get exposed to multiple, types of clinical settings. And after I graduated, I actually went into acute care. So I was working at University of Miami Hospital and per diem, and I loved the flexibility of the job, but I was trying to keep my mind open because I went into PT school thinking that I wanted to be that physical therapist that I grew up with who helped me through my ACL reconstruction, you know. I wanted to work with athletes. I wanted to work in more of an active adult population in the outpatient setting where people come to you and they live in their homes and not in the hospital. But I don't know, something in me was like, no, don't put all your eggs in one basket, explore, keep your options open. I really liked cardiopulmonary physical therapy as well. So I was like, okay, let me take this position at UMH. And about a year after I started, COVID hit. So here I am working in a hospital. You know, COVID's going around and people are freaking out. And as a per diem, they weren't calling us in as often either. They were prioritizing their full time staff. So I was like, okay, let me go find another position. So after getting out of acute care, which now I realize was totally meant to be because I have recurring nightmares about being in acute care and treating patients in the hospital. And I'm just amazed that I did that, honestly, because I look back and I'm like, okay, I probably will never do that again. Just because of it was very, very stressful for me. I didn't handle it well. They had amazing physical therapists that were just like, if I have a family member in the hospital, I hope those PTs are working with my family members because they were awesome. Just wasn't meant to be for me. After that, I went to an outpatient pediatric sports medicine clinic a little bit further north. So my husband and I moved about an hour north of Miami toward the Boca Raton area. And that was on paper like the best outpatient position I could have asked for. I had one patient every 45 minutes, whereas some of my friends were treating 3 or 4 patients an hour at a typical outpatient clinic. My supervisor was amazing. All of my coworkers were amazing. Um, the the thing that made me leave for this non-clinical job that you mentioned was the pay. I was seeing some people on the side privately with my cash-based PT clinic in Coconut Creek. And I would, charge my rates for a cash-based clinic. And meanwhile, I'm working in the physical therapy clinic and getting paid $30 an hour. And I was just like, dude, what am I doing? This doesn't make any sense. There was not much room for upward mobility either within the company. So I was like, okay, this is a learning opportunity. I'm going to learn from all these amazing people on the team. And then when the time is right, I'll make my move. And that's when, about after a year of working in that setting, I fully transitioned to that non-clinical job with a company called Hybrid Performance Method, which we can talk about all the things I learned at hybrid because I learned like tenfold at hybrid compared to what I learned at all of my different clinical jobs.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that. Before we do acute care, is that mainly treating people that have been in like an accident or something at a hospital?
Yeah, I worked since I was per diem, I was all over the place. So sometimes I was in the intensive care units. I tried to stay out of there as much as possible because it really was not my thing. There were lines and leads coming out of all of these different places on the patient, and I just wanted to help them move. And it was
That's
not
hard.
my forte. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I learned and I did what I could to make sure that everybody was safe and that my treatments were effective. But there are just I am just in awe of the therapists that were my mentors that worked in the ICU day in and day out. That's a tough, tough place to work in, emotionally too, as well as physically. So you would see people in accidents, but we would see a lot of just chronic illness. You know, you would see the results of years of neglect on your body, not eating right, not exercising, whether it was, you know, someone getting an amputation because their diabetes got out of control, or they're getting open heart surgery because things aren't going good in their cardiovascular system. It was it was a downer, and I felt like I really was just slapping band-aids, you know. Everywhere I went, it was just a band-aid. It was just a band-aid. Oh, how many medications are you on? Long list of medications just to keep this person alive, you know? And when I finally left acute care, I was very encouraged by the fact that I was now working preventatively. I had so much more ability to help people prevent themselves from getting into that position, or at least prolonging or delaying it as much as possible. And I feel a big sense of purpose there.
Yeah, you can only do so much when you're kind of in that second stage. So I would
Mhm.
definitely have a hard time doing it. I have a friend,
Mhm.
different. She's a speech therapist, but they do a similar thing. They do clinicals, and then and she said the same thing from that front because it's a lot of accidents versus more preventative. You know, for her stuff, it's working with kids. But would you say that time clinically, obviously, you know, you deal with a lot of people in very compromised positions there. Do you think you learned anything, whether about you know, being a physical therapist or just working with people during that period, that's really helped you, you know, nowadays?
Totally, totally. The amount of motivational interviewing we had to do with patients who just did not want to get out of bed at the hospital is a skill in itself, you know. Educating someone who feels like their life is ending at that moment and they don't want to do anything and they're depressed and they haven't seen the outside world in days or weeks. Um, Getting that person to understand the importance of this small 15-minute session of sitting edge of bed and practicing sit to stands, that was those were valuable skills, people skills, you know, not even just the physical therapist skills. Learning the soft skills was huge in the hospital. And also before that, I really didn't have a framework of like what goes on in a hospital. I hadn't spent much time in a hospital. I did, you know, some volunteer hours before I went to physical therapy school, but um, now I just have a an idea of when my, you know, right now when my clients tell me, "Hey, my mom's in the hospital." Hey, and I'm asking like, "Okay, is she getting PT? Is she getting OT? Is she, you know, what are things looking like?" Now I have these experiences to draw from that really are it makes me feel like a well-rounded resource for them, you know. If I had never had that experience, I'm just going to be like, "Ooh, sorry," you know. Now I actually have some valuable contributions to make to the conversation. So I'm glad I did it.
Definitely, yeah. Well, it's definitely a hard situation to be in. I assumed there was a ton that you learned because I feel like when you're in those situations, a lot of the outside BS is stripped away and you get to like the root of humanity. And if you have somebody
Mhm.
coming in who's not in the hospital now, you know, when you work with people, I assume that you have a much better gauge on noticing, you know, some underlying like soft skills things that they might have to deal with versus, you know, maybe if you didn't have that skill, it would just go unnoticed, you know?
Yeah, and it gives me a lot. I can speak very, very powerfully now as to what we are preventing, as to, oh, you don't want to work out today? Here's the bigger picture. You don't want to end up doing XYZ in the hospital because I've seen it and I do not want that. I would not wish that on my worst enemy, you know? And that's really the beauty of CrossFit, what I have come to learn over the years. didn't always have this view on it, but I really respect the larger mission of it in terms of battling chronic illness. And that is much more powerful than anything you'll find at any other training facility. So seeing the worst of the worst, I feel really, really strongly about sending that message to my clients, and teaching them the bigger picture of what they're training for. It's not just getting your first muscle up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, prevention and training for that longer health span is something that I've always been super passionate about. Could you maybe speak to what you speak with people about the most when it comes to that? You mentioned having a really good, idea of being able to speak to people about what you're actually preventing. A lot of people listening might not have any idea what you mean when you say that.
Mm-hmm.
So could you
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I discovered when I started um, working at this CrossFit gym that I now own, CrossFit Coconut Creek. Like I said, it's about an hour north of Miami. I was very surprised whenever I brought up to anybody, hey, when's the last time you did your blood work? They would be like, never. Or like, years ago, it's not a big deal. And I would be like, dude, here are the markers we're looking at. You need to establish your baseline now, especially if they were brand new to CrossFit and they said, oh, I want to be healthy. I want to improve my health. Everybody wants to, typically they'll come in with a weight loss goal or some sort of body composition goal, but they also do want to be healthy and for as long as they can. They want to be a better parent. They want to be a better grandparent. So when I asked them, hey, when's the last time you did your blood work? Are you looking at your cholesterol? Are you watching your triglycerides? How about your blood pressure? And having that cardiopulmonary background in physical therapy, I feel like I have a right to talk to these people with some background knowledge, and I can educate them on here's what we're looking to work toward in terms of these are the numbers we should aim for, and work with your physician, right? Because I'm not a physician. I can't prescribe treatments for those things, but just giving them an idea of where they should be and increasing their awareness of getting those measurements, because a lot of people come in and they don't know what they're walking around at. They're 50, 60 years old and they haven't gotten their blood work done in forever. So that's the one that I do the most often, those markers of health especially because with my private patients, I work with older adults. So it becomes even more apparent. And I've got most of them are on board to get their blood work done at least every 6 months. And they come in, I walk them through their results and refer them to their physicians if anything needs any addressing. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I was actually just having this conversation with somebody a long time ago. I heard someone say, if you're changing your oil, 3 or 4 times more than you're checking your body's oil, you might need to, I'm not a car guy, so I can care less about cars. Car guys might be like, oh my gosh, but like getting those markers is super important.
Yeah.
So maybe not with your older patients. I assume this, might not be as much of a issue there, but do you find with a lot of like the younger CrossFit athletes, they might have this bulletproof mentality of like, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't need to worry about this?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. I find that the topic of conversation for those types of athletes revolves more around proper rest protocols, taking a rest day. A lot of them do not like to take rest days. And, depending on how hard you're training, I really don't think if someone loves going to the gym 7 days a week, personally, in my experience, they're not going hard enough to do much harm. There are a handful of competitive athletes at our gym that train 6 or 7 days per week. And I have those conversations with them in terms of the benefits of having a rest day or maybe 2 rest days so that you can go hard when you do the WOD the next day. You feel fresh, and your performance will be enhanced from all of that recovery that you just graced your body with. But our gym, the primary demographic is parents and busy professionals whose main goal is just to be healthy, be strong, be resilient for the rest of their lives. So while we have a handful of younger, more competitive athletes who are looking to, make it to the CrossFit quarterfinals this year, mainly it's the older folks, the middle-aged folks who are just trying to get, back on the wagon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I have that conversation a lot with the people I work with on rest, and it's so, it happens every time. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better this week. You know,
Yeah.
when they
It's
were doing,
amazing.
15 workouts a week before, they were doing like 2 and 3 days, like all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have many of those who do 2-a-days. I think, one time I saw someone doing 2-a-days and I gave them an earful and they were like, okay, I guess I won't do that anymore. So it's
Yep.
not too common at our gym.
So you mentioned transitioning out of the clinical role that we just spoke about to non-clinical role. Could you explain to the listeners what you mean by a non-clinical role, what that looks like?
Yeah, so in 2021, I had been working part-time for Hybrid Performance Method since 2020. And so I worked that job at the pediatric sports medicine clinic. That was part-time. And I worked for Hybrid part-time and I saw my private clients on the side. So that was really like a dream come true. I had always looked up to Steffi Cohen, who founded that company with her partner, Hayden Bowe. And I just thought they were doing amazing things. They put out so much content about strength training, about powerlifting, of course, because she's, 25 times world record holding powerlifter. And I just loved what they did. So uh, when the pandemic hit, I had more free time on my hands because per diem physical therapists weren't getting called in as much at the hospital. So I got my precision nutrition level 1 certification and I reached out to Hybrid and I was like, hey, do you guys need nutrition coaches? Because they had a nutrition coaching program. It was all remote. Just reached out to them and Ian Kaplan, he was then the CTO of the company. And he said, no, but I think we might need you for something else. I sent over my resume and he saw that I was a physical therapist and what have you. And Steffi Cohen was actually in the class above me at She graduated with her DPT as well. So Ian brought me on board and I started to help them with all of their online educational initiatives. So we built out an online course system where we had nutrition courses, we had powerlifting courses, weightlifting courses, equipped with all these videos and resources for people to download. And it was just a hub of knowledge. You want to learn more about X, you go to Hybrid and you take their online course. And that role evolved. Thank goodness it was actually a blessing. They wanted to bring me on full time. So I was able to leave my clinical job at the sports med clinic. And now it was a non-clinical position. I'm a physical therapist, but I'm not necessarily treating patients, right? I'm working in education. The title was Director of Education at Hybrid. And that was an amazing, amazing opportunity. I got to meet so many amazing people, so many big names in the CrossFit space. They were working with very, very famous athletes. And I'm just like shocked that I got to rub elbows with these people at all. And I learned a lot about running a business from them. Their CMO at the time was a woman named Candace Hudspeth. And she was like, man, she was my hero. She was a workhorse and she seemed to just know the answer to everything. So from her, I learned a ton about marketing, sales, just working systems like building a website, working through Kajabi, skills that I still use now in my business. And I wouldn't have never learned if I hadn't had that position at Hybrid. So I stayed on with them full time for about a year before I moved on and went full time into owning my CrossFit affiliate.
Yeah, people don't realize what goes on, like all the business stuff that you have to do in the background until you see it or you're learning it yourself. And then it's like, holy cow, this is like,
Yeah. Even just learning like how to use MailChimp,
yeah.
I'm so grateful that I learned on their watch and now I'm not completely naive to it, small things like that.
Oh yeah, I'm always Googling MailChimp stuff.
Yeah.
So educational work, is that something you had done before creating courses or Like, how was that experience for you? Because it sounds like you built out a lot of courses for them.
Yeah, it was my first time doing that. I really, I loved writing papers in school. I loved making presentations throughout school. So, whatever they needed, I was happy to help. I had a lot of freedom in terms of how I presented the information, and I got to work with really great graphic designers who then like brought it to life and made it look really cool and stuff. So I hadn't really had much experience before, but they needed someone. I'm guessing what they saw in me was like, hey, this woman is educated. She, knows how to work with the team. And she's local, so she can come in if needed. So it was a learning experience for all of us.
No, yeah, that's an awesome experience. Would you say you mentioned learning a lot on the business side? Would you say you learned anything else that kind of pertains to what you do day to day now outside of running a business?
Yeah, honestly, doing all of the research for all of our different online courses and just the educational content that we put out in general, like for Steffi's Instagram page or for our YouTube episodes, just doing that research made me a much more confident coach as well, and physical therapist. But just working with people face to face, I now felt like when I gave recommendations or when I taught them about the RPE scale or nutrition or what have you, I just had so much more of a leg to stand on because I had rifled through so many papers and I had put it down into a separate presentation and gotten feedback from a team. And that that really boosted my confidence as a clinician. Whereas before, maybe the imposter syndrome type feelings were like running a little bit high. After I worked with hybrid, I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing and I know that I can help people with this knowledge.
Yeah, even if you never speak, uh, you know, 90% of the stuff that you have researched or learned to somebody, knowing it, says a lot for your ability to show up and talk to people just because you have that confidence of like, if I had to explain this, I could go as in depth as this person wanted to.
Yeah, they say the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else, right? And that's what I was doing. So it was super effective in that realm.
Definitely. So you mentioned your views on CrossFit have changed over the years. Could you maybe explain your initial impressions and kind of what period of your career that was in, and then how that's transitioned as your careers progress?
Yeah. This comes at a really good time because last Saturday I gave a presentation at our gym, just an overview of the history of CrossFit and a lot of the models that they use and my own personal journey with CrossFit. So, way back in 2010, I was in high school and my first exposure to CrossFit was my dad waving me over. He was at the computer and he's like, Becca, come look at this. And he pulls up that video. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's the Nasty Girls video with three women doing a CrossFit workout and they're doing air squats, strict ring muscle ups, and power cleans with like 95 pounds. And my dad showed me this video and he's like, look at these women. They're insane. This is amazing. And I was like, oh, these women are badasses. I want to be like that. So that was my first time hearing about CrossFit. And I was very fortunate to have a gym in my backyard. We lived in a very small town, and my parents owned like a community fitness center. And it started out as a fitness center just for women. And eventually they made it co-ed and now it's just kind of like a regular gym. But I would go out there. I would teach myself how to do, clean and jerk, snatch. I would try some of the gymnastic stuff. And I would try out all of the hero workouts. I would try out all the girls' workouts like Fran and Annie and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, I love CrossFit. I love it so much. And I went to college. We didn't have an affiliate near us where we lived. So I went to college and I got to visit some affiliates. They started to crop up more at that time. This is like 2012. There was CrossFit of Ithaca, CrossFit Palace popped up. And I got to continue my love for CrossFit. I was training for powerlifting at the same time. I was playing rugby through college, and I was also in our CrossFit club. So we would meet twice a week, do some crazy CrossFit workouts. And I was just like, man, I just love being a well-rounded athlete. I don't want to just lift. I don't want to just run. I want to do everything. And I want to be able to crush any physical task that is presented to me. And then I went to physical therapy school. And I quickly realized that physical therapists have a certain view of CrossFit and CrossFitters. And it seemed to me that a lot of my professors had the thought that they would always have a job because CrossFitters always hurt themselves. And I heard many of them say that blatantly in classes. And meanwhile, it's coming from professors who have never tried CrossFit, who don't really exercise regularly themselves. So I was like, uh-oh, CrossFit's bad. Uh-oh, this thing that I love is hurting people. Oh, I shouldn't do it. Maybe I should just power lift. So I just stuck to powerlifting. Meanwhile, my back hurt like a bitch the whole freaking time. But I had other classmates who were into CrossFit, and we would be like, hey, you want to go? It was almost like I was a closeted CrossFitter. You want to go to CrossFit Seoul and drop in and do Murph and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, I'm getting, in 1 year, I'm getting all of these bad reviews about CrossFit from people I respected, from people who know a thing or two about training, about injury risk, about the human body and what it can and cannot do or should do. And I'm just like, man, maybe this is not good. Maybe it's not good. Granted, it's not good to do power cleans and snatches, every day back to back. Of course not. And then thrusters, and then the movement variability. I could see where that would be an issue because it turned into a lot of just like Olympic lifting, barbell cycling. So I think when I started to have negative thoughts about CrossFit because of that, I started to look at those things like the recurring barbell cycling workouts that were just hinge after hinge after hinge, day after day after day, right? But there were gyms who were doing it right. There were gyms who programmed really well and had a great degree of movement variability and who followed the tenets of CrossFit and didn't just want to kill their members and have them laying on the floor dead after every single workout. There were gyms doing it right. I just started to adopt those views of my professors and some people around me that like, this thing is not good, and if you recommend it to people, you're putting their health at jeopardy. And after I graduated from PT school, I was like, I need something to keep me fit because I don't want to go to the gym by myself anymore. And what did I resort to? CrossFit, of course. I go back to the thing that gave me lots of joy, lots of results in the past, and a community and socialization, right? And friends. So here I am moving an hour north from Miami. Where do I go? I go to a CrossFit gym because I know I'm going to make some friends and I'm going to get fit. And from then on, I was just like, you can look at CrossFit from the standpoint of, is it, perfectly periodized training? No, it's random. It's varied. It's literally in its, definition. But practically speaking, what are people going to do when they need to train, when they need to get fit and healthy? What are they going to do? They're going to do something that's fun. That's the number one priority for any training program. The people that come to my gym do not want to go to the gym by themselves and do 4x10 of every single exercise and leave. They want to sweat. They want to breathe hard. They want to high five each other. They want loud music. They want grungy atmosphere, and they want good coaching. And you're not going to get that anywhere else. And I discovered that, okay, what matters here is that this methodology gets the job done. It gets people moving. It gets them to do the thing that we want them to do, which is just get off the couch, And so then I was all for it. I was pro CrossFit, and gradually I was like, okay, you know what? Butterfly pull-ups, maybe not that bad when they're implemented at the right time for the right person. Okay, maybe barbell cycling, not that bad when implemented at the right time for the right person, right? And so I discovered that, okay, at my affiliate, I don't have to do things that I'm not comfortable with. I can set boundaries as to, okay, you need to have your strict pull-ups before you do your kipping pull-ups, before you do your butterfly pull-ups. Okay, you need to be able to do dumbbell hang cleans before you start tossing around the barbell with hang cleans. Just an example there. And that made me realize that, okay, this is not a bad thing. And then a lot of different, research started coming out with comparing injury rates versus of CrossFit versus other common training methodologies, sport, what have you. And it's really not all that more dangerous, So that was the roller coaster of my relationship with CrossFit. I loved it. I hated it and thought it was the worst thing in the world. And now I really do think it is a big answer to the world's most vexing problems of obesity and chronic illness.
Yeah, that was a journey, and I love it. I'm here for it. My introduction to CrossFit was all the jokes about CrossFit, because I was, looking at coaches and people that were kind of similar to the people you spoke about in PT school. Like, this isn't periodized, this is random, you know. And then I'm sure you saw the joke videos, like kipping everything and all the stuff. And in that time period, people were coming out with. But as time's progressed, I feel like that notion has become less and less popular. And maybe it's along the same lines of the notion that lifting heavy is bad in general, because that's kind of started to die off. So
Yeah.
it kind of seems like those have come in parallel. As people start to recognize that, hey, deadlifting heavy isn't going to inherently hurt my back, people also start realizing, hey, like, CrossFit's not super dangerous if done correctly. It's pretty safe. Olympic lifting is not only CrossFit. Olympic lifting is a sport itself as well. So Olympic lifts are safe when done correctly. I think CrossFit, that's probably my favorite thing about CrossFit is, well, the two things. One, getting people to move, movement positive, done a ton for that. And just getting people to do things like Olympic lift and do all these things that they might not do normally. Like you mentioned, they might just go out and do like 10 minutes of cardio and a couple push-ups.
Right.
So I think it's been super, super impactful on the fitness industry as a whole, even not CrossFit, just like widespread adoption. You mentioned CrossFit not being, typically periodized. So I'd be interested. You mentioned powerlifting while you trained CrossFit and did all these other things. So how did you fit in powerlifting training that's more typically, periodized and progressed traditionally, while you were also training CrossFit?
Yeah, back then, my CrossFit was very sporadic. I would do it maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. But if I was preparing for a powerlifting competition, I'd join in on like the Saturday WOD at the gym I was coaching at in Miami. But yeah, I would typically shift a little bit away from CrossFit during those times. And then after I was done with my competition, I would mix it back in a little bit. But I did a little bit of everything. I did some bodybuilding training because we had an array of machines at our apartment gym at the time. And that was prior to really when I went all in on CrossFit. When I was still in Miami, I was, just dabbling, I would say, at that point, because here I am trying to battle this like cognitive dissonance. Like, okay, I want to train, I want to be fit, I want to be good at everything, but I don't want to do CrossFit. This is like, I was in a weird spot. And since then, I've gotten a lot fitter. I've gotten a lot stronger. My numbers compared to when I was doing powerlifting, they're really not that different now. And I'm not doing any periodized powerlifting training besides our CrossFit classes, which the strength component, we will periodize and we'll have structured blocks that revolve around a movement or two movements every 4 to 6 weeks. It's a little bit more of frequent turnover with those blocks due to just group class dynamics and keeping people engaged. Would I love to put them on a 12-week program? Yes, but they will probably leave. So you have to keep that in mind. I've learned a lot from programming for group fitness for CrossFit affiliate. In the last year, I've learned so much in that realm as to like what keeps people engaged, what actually does get them better, how to frame things so that the coaches buy into getting them doing certain things, and so the members buy in. That in itself has been a journey, which, sorry, I just took your question and like took a right turn. But yeah, when I was trying to piece together CrossFit, powerlifting, rugby, blah, 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 it was not perfect by any means. It was very haphazard and very like, well, I just got to do this, I thrown together, I would say. If I could go back, I feel like I would be a much better power lifter because I would have a much better idea of how to program for that more effectively. But that was a phase in my life. I got pretty strong.
Yep. No, you're fine. Taking it the other way, it actually brought
Yeah.
up an interesting question for me, which is, like as a coach, you can just go in if you don't care, you can go in and just do boring things for 10 years and get super far. You don't need a ton of variety to make a ton of progress. But like you mentioned, people will probably not show up if you do that. So how do you, marry that up? How do you keep people engaged and keep them progressing? That way they keep showing up, and stay consistent. But also, like you mentioned, they're not just coming in and, doing random things that isn't actually bringing them into progression. Because you mentioned that CrossFit is random, but then you also mentioned progression. You mentioned, hey,
Right.
maybe we need to do this before we do this and this before
Right.
this. So clearly, even though it's more random than a traditional periodization, there's still a progression model that you follow. It just might not look the same as a powerlifter going in and doing their progression over 12 weeks.
Right. Right. That all comes down to coaching. So the engagement, keeping people engaged, being able to explain to them why they're doing a certain thing to get them to be like, "Oh yeah, okay. I'm pumped to try to work toward this. I'm okay with doing this." Um, and the coach's job, if the workout is something that is more advanced, it's their job to know the progressions and to kind of bring everybody in the class from level 0. Next progression, make it a little bit harder. Next progression, make it a little bit harder. Okay, who's going to stay at this level 2? This is what you're doing for the workout today. Next progression, make it a little harder. Okay, now you're going to stay here. And then all of my advanced athletes, they're going to actually do the workout RX or whatever they're doing for the day. So I think a lot of that comes down to the coaching. And I have amazing coaches who love to educate everybody. They're okay with having all of the attention on them, bringing everybody over to the rack before we start our, every 2 minutes on the minute back squat and explaining to them, this is why we're doing this. This is what we did last time. Make sure you look at the score you got last time and try and add 5 pounds to it, for example. So the coaching aspect is what makes CrossFit really different. I would say too, they're not group fitness instructors, they're coaching you through the entire class. But the the other thing is the programming itself does have to have an element of fun, an element of, excitement and unpredictability and intensity. And I'll admit, when I first took over this gym, my programming was not good. It was boring. It was what I did, right? It was my type of training. It was not exciting to people, right? And thankfully, I had a couple members come up to me during this transition time of ownership, and they were like, "Hey, Becca, we're getting some feedback about the programming." And they let me know what they were feeling. And a part of me was like, man, these guys don't know the science behind it. They don't know, nobody's taken a programming class. Nobody has the experience that I do. But I changed. The next week, I gave them more CrossFit type workouts, right? And because I remember one time I programmed when I first started out, one of the Metcons had Rufa elevated split squats. And it was basically just like a bodybuilding circuit, It wasn't a CrossFit type of Metcon AMRAP type thing. It was just bodybuilding. And so they came up to me, they gave me that feedback, and I was like, okay, let's make it more traditional CrossFit. Let's use all the traditional CrossFit movements and let's see how it goes. And people loved it. And I was doing the classes and I freaking loved it. All my coaches did the classes and they were like, yes, okay, this is much better. So thankfully, after just a couple weeks of, that transition time, that adjustment time, we got a handle on the programming. I got a handle on the programming. And I was able to keep people more engaged at that point. But you got to make it fun. You got to make sure that people are bought in. You got to have a good degree of movement variability. We can't be hinging every day or using the barbell every day, even though people literally request barbell every single day. I'm like, guys, trust me, you'll thank me when we mix in some other modalities in there. And also something that I've learned too is you you can't be afraid to push someone. When I first got into it, I was almost still scared of CrossFit and still scared of its risks when I started programming and owning the gym. And you really cannot deny someone the opportunity to push their limits if they want to go there. If someone wants to learn how to do a butterfly pull-up, it is not my place to tell them, no, you cannot do that. That movement is stupid. Whereas in PT school, did I think butterfly pull-ups were stupid? Absolutely. But here I am with this person asking me for help. I have to give them the guidance. I have to let them know why they should do their strict pull-ups first. I have to teach them the mechanics and the progressions for butterfly pull-ups safely with a band on the ground and a PVC pipe, practicing the movement. I have to give them periscapular strengthening exercises to protect that labrum, you know what I mean? And it was just not my place to tell someone, no, you shouldn't do that. Or that was a big adjustment for me. I needed to be comfortable pushing someone who wanted to be pushed,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's super important because that person wants to do it. And if you tell them no, they most likely won't receive it and they'll probably go do it
Right.
anyways in some way that they might get hurt. So
Right.
even if it might not be the most optimal thing, as the coach, your role is to guide them safely to what they want to do, not what you want them to do. So
Exactly.
I think that's something CrossFit does super well in general is the coaching. Like to become like a CrossFit certified coach, like the process I feel like is very, very good and make sure that, the coaches know, hey, this is proper movement and kind of know how to program and not just throw somebody into a Olympic lift and let them do it horribly.
Yeah.
So
Have you taken your level 1?
I haven't. No, it's something that I've wanted to do. I haven't done it yet, but I know people who have, and I've seen, talk to them and kind of done some other certifications, and just the difference in practical application versus book knowledge is super super big, and I think it's great. Um, people like to, we talked about before, CrossFit's unsafe, but like the standards to be a coach are actually pretty high, I would argue.
Yeah, the level 1 was really, really cool. I took it, in order to be an owner, I had to take mine, and it's not cheap. That's the first thing that everybody notices is that it's expensive. But even if you go in with such a strong background in exercise knowledge, training knowledge, programming, whatever, it's still super valuable because the instructors that led the course, I got to meet them, rub elbows with them. They all have their own boxes. One of them was a physical therapist from Ithaca College. And so I got to talk to her about how she has her cash-based clinic within her within her affiliate. And the other guys, I talked to them, and just the networking opportunity, at least for an owner, was incredible. And all of these other local people, oh, I work out at this box. Oh, I work out at this box, making connections in the South Florida region with all of these people was so valuable. The course itself was great, but that's what I walked away with, was such awesome conversations with these people and realizing, again, just kind of solidifying, like, yes, you're doing the right thing. This isn't a mistake to own a CrossFit affiliate. This is the real deal, and this is exactly where you should be. So I highly recommend it for the networking opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, those are priceless. You learn a ton, even if you don't mean to, just
Yeah.
being around other coaches and speaking with other coaches. So, yeah, it's definitely on my radar. It's, I have a young kid and just, I'm not going to get into, a lot going
Yeah.
on, but it's on my
Yeah.
radar. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned a few times how in CrossFit, it's probably not great to go in and do these barbell circuits every day and hinge all the time and do all this stuff. That might be the only thing people picture in their head when they think of CrossFit. So,
Yeah.
could you kind of explain what those between times look like when you're not doing what people normally think of as CrossFit? What does it look like? Because people probably like, if you're not doing this, you're not doing CrossFit.
Yeah, yeah. What let's see. Before I took my level 1, I had a certain idea of what CrossFit was. And I just imagine a lot of barbell work, a lot of loud music, a lot of sweat, and then dying afterwards. And there's a lot more to it. They group in level 1, as you will learn when you take it. They like to classify the movements into 3 categories: weightlifting, which is moving a weight around your body or an object around your body efficiently. Gymnastics, which is moving your body around an object efficiently. And monostructural. So more cyclical, repetitive type movements like you're rowing, like you're running, your bike, um, that kind of stuff. So CrossFit, typical CrossFit programming will mix those 3 categories of movement in as many combinations as creativity will allow. One day you might be doing a triplet, one of each category. One day you might be doing a couplet with redundant types of movements, like 2 weightlifting movements or 2 gymnastics movements. And the list goes on. You can make so many different combinations from those categories. But that's why when you do CrossFit, it's a little bit of everything. And sometimes I have to remind my members about that when they say, oh man, we want to do barbell. We want to do barbell. I'm like, guys, if you're a CrossFitter, you got to be ready for any object. We got to throw the dumbbells in there, right? We got to do single dumbbell work and dual dumbbell work. We got to be able to do our kettlebell work. That's something that we've been training a lot lately because you never know what's going to come up in the CrossFit Open, which is coming up in about 2 weeks. They might throw some kettlebell cleans in there. And a lot of people's kettlebell cleans are scary. They look really scary. So we're practicing them lately. Kettlebell snatches, same thing. It takes a lot of skill. And if you aren't open to learning those new skills, then you're limiting your potential as a CrossFitter and as a human in general. And yeah, that's a battle that I fight every day with people, just making sure we're having a wide variety of equipment. Like I said, barbells, kettlebells, dumbbells, being proficient in all body weight movements too. There's a day where we're just doing push-ups. That's not fancy. That's not crazy. That's not super overwhelming. It's simple and it's effective. A couplet of push-ups and running, man, that'll drive you right into the ground if you do it right. So yes, when someone comes up to our gym and they say, I'm doing CrossFit for the first time, I've never done this before. I'm like, we do a little bit of everything. Today's going to be different than tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be different than the next day, but we'll keep you safe while you do it. And you're going to have a great time while you do it, as long as you just keep coming back. And for that reason, we usually offer like a free trial class. This month we offered a full week free trial, and I found that was much more effective in getting people to join because they got a much fuller picture as to what CrossFit is, because the workouts were completely different from day to day.
Definitely. Yeah. So you mentioned a few times community, and there's been some longer term studies on health and happiness in general, and they all conclude the relationships are super important. Even some of the studies on sports that have the most correlation with longevity have shown sports you wouldn't necessarily think because of the community aspect. And so when it comes to CrossFit, CrossFit has a super strong community, and CrossFit gyms are always like super great, super welcoming, and super high energy as far as a community. So could you speak to the community aspect of CrossFit, and, as an owner, how do you like cultivate that community in your own area?
Yeah, absolutely. We are blessed with awesome members, man. They take it upon themselves to really grow and protect the community and the culture at the gym. Obviously, you got to lead from the front. I have to make sure that I'm projecting the type of person that I want at my gym with my own actions and how I carry myself. But man, our coaches, especially, they lead from the front in that regard as well. Just being genuinely good people will attract genuinely good people. If we're not a-holes, then all the a-holes sort themselves out after the first class or two. They discover, okay, this isn't a place for me. It's a matter of walking the walk, from the front, right? The leaders in the group, the coaches and the owner, and definitely making the opportunities there for people. If they want to hang out and they want to gather, we have to facilitate that. We have to make sure that at least we're providing the opportunity. So outside of our gym, we've got 2 big picnic tables and 1 big round table. And I don't have to tell anybody. They just naturally before class, they all gather there, they chat, they laugh, they have fun. After class, they all gather there, they chat, they laugh, they have fun. And it's almost to the point where like we have to tell them like shh for the next class because they're having so much fun that the current class, the coach is having to like scream over them in order to get their instructions out there. But that's a problem. I would take that problem every single day. Oh, my members are being too social with each other. Boo hoo. You know, I'll I'll take that any day. Um, but the events that we have Friendsgiving, you know, people bring their meals and we share a meal together during the holidays. We have a yearly deadlift competition around Halloween where people are setting crazy PRs with their deadlift. We do things like Murph on Memorial Day weekend, which is a huge deal for us. It's a really, really powerful day in our community. And people hang out all the time outside the gym, you know? I think it's just something that naturally happens in a CrossFit gym because it is such a powerful and potent training methodology. People just feel good afterwards, you know? And if they see that the norm here is after your workout, you go and fist bump the person next to you and tell them good job, there's a conversation opportunity right there. You know, you're going to strike up something with someone when you come to the gym. And before you know it, people are using each other. They're business owners. They're using each other and leaning on each other for things that they need in their daily life. You know, one of our members just had a baby and everybody was over the moon for him. 2 of our members just got married and everybody was really, really stoked for them. It's just something that naturally happens. And CrossFit is the conduit, you know? CrossFit is the thing that brings them together, just being in the box with people. It just naturally happens. You don't have to force it too much, you know?
Yeah, that's super important, especially nowadays. I feel like with remote work and post COVID, it can be very difficult. So
Mhm.
being able to go to CrossFit and get that rejuvenated emotional connection as well and make friends, that community is probably super. I don't know if it is. I would argue it's super underrated part of CrossFit.
Super. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so being mindful of time, do you have anything else that you wanted to share? Any other lessons or anything you wanted to let the listeners know about?
Um, right now, the lesson that I'm learning about myself is what kind of leader I want to be. I always thought about myself as a good leader. I was, you know, captain of multiple sports teams growing up, and captain of that. What was it? President of the CrossFit Club in undergrad, like I mentioned. And I always thought of myself, okay, I'm a good leader. I'm a good leader. And right now, building a business and leading my staff and leading my members, that leadership is being put to the test. And I would say prioritizing working on myself and really making sure that I'm showing up for everybody, showing up for myself, showing up for my family and my husband at home when I'm not working. It's very easy to fall into this trap of working 12 hours per day. You know, I'm my own boss now, and sometimes I turn into the boss that I would never want to have. You know what I mean? I'm making myself work 12 hours a day. You have to draw boundaries. And I'm learning right now how to be that type of leader that everybody else needs and what I need for myself. And I'm working with some mentors in the space to make sure that that happens faster than just me figuring out myself, you know. And I'm learning a lot from them too because they are excellent leaders and taking some chapters from their books on that in that realm.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I have to remind myself at times you can't pour from an empty cup, and so I have to, set those boundaries because it's so easy to just work 12, 15 hours a day when you're building something.
Yeah, yeah, and it's fascinating because you think that you own a gym, you'll never run into an issue with getting your own workout. It's It's very far from the truth. You know what I mean? When you own your own gym, it is super easy to skip your own workout and prioritize everybody else getting the best workout that they can possibly get, you know? But you gotta make it fit. You gotta work it in there somehow. You gotta block out the time. I'm being super anal lately with my time blocking and time management. Just trying to floss those skills and make them a little bit more second nature so that my own health does not go down the crapper, because God, I would look back and be not too pleased with that. Even if my business was thriving, if my own health and my own, family life, home life was not thriving, not worth it in that case.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. I definitely agree, and have been learning some of the same things recently. So that said, if anybody wants to learn more about you, your gym, or anything else you're involved in, where can they find you? And anything else you want to plug and share? I'll put it down in the
Yeah.
description so people can click.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow me on Instagram. I'm not super active lately on my own Instagram, beccafay.dpt, but you can follow us on the gym Instagram, crossfit.coconut creek. And check us out on our website, www.crossfitcoconutcreek.com. If you're local to Coconut Creek, Florida, you can leave your info on there and we'll get you in for a free trial. If you are listening to this podcast, I'll give you a free trial week. How about that? Ooh.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Becca, it was great to talk to you. Definitely learned a lot and had a good time. So thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you enjoyed it, it would be helpful if you could leave a rating or a review on whatever platform you're listening on, as that helps us reach more audiences and get more awesome guests on. If you're interested in anything we talked about today, you can check the show notes for all links. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next podcast.